Welcome, dear friends. We're on Super Wednesdays here in the Holy Apple, in the Holy Land, on the Holy Hilltop, winding down the 29th of Adar. Yeah, you got it. We're coming to the closing day of Adar, and this will be our final contribution before going to the Passover vacation for 4 weeks. So we'll take this opportunity to wishing all of those listening out there, watching out there, should have a meaningful Passover. And as we say, this Passover should be different than all other Passovers. We should see the redemption of the Jewish people with birachamim, with mercy. And we'll say Amen. Okay, a quick 3-4 minute summary of the class last week. Title is A Must Listen Before Passover 2020 5780. We mentioned 3 Jewish holidays: Passover, Purim, and Hanukkah. We brought 3 or 4 different points that we see that it seems very clear that these holidays are celebrating. There is a pointer to celebrate the downfall of our enemies, of those wicked nations that persecuted the Jewish people. We saw also that there happens to be holidays all throughout the year and during the time of the Second Temple, which were holidays for the downfall of various wicked rulers. So, instead of going home, we didn't go home, because then we pulled out 2 bombshells. The first bombshell was the Shibbolei Haleket. Shibbolei Haleket was a great Torah scholar. He lived approximately 850 years ago. His name is Rabbi Tzidkiah, the son of the doctor. His father was a doctor. And he has a classic book which is called Shibbolei Haleket, and in there he quotes a unknown, anonymous, not in our hands for many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. He quotes from a unknown source, Midrash Harninu, and here it says the reason why we do not say a complete praise Hallel prayer on the last day of Passover is because of the fact that the Egyptians drowned in the Reed Sea, and therefore, as it says, but as King Solomon wrote in his book Mishlei, it says there that when your enemy falls, you shall not rejoice. That is in Mishlei 24:17. So now, just one correction from last week. Rashi, I made a mistake. I said that Rashi brings down the Shibbolei Haleket. Rashi did not. Rashi lived 100 years before Rabbi Tzidkiah. But what Rashi did bring down twice in all of his commentaries on the Torah and the Talmud, he brought down twice words of the unknown, anonymous Midrash that has disappeared for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. He brought it down twice, the Midrash of Harninu. So I stand corrected on that. That's an amazing thing. That's our first bombshell. Now, this is a very respectable work. It's quoted very, very often by many of the great Rishonim. And for example, and also the later generations, the big bomb number 2, the bombshell number 2 was, we said last week that not only did the Shibbolei Haleket bring this idea that Jews do not rejoice on the downfall of their enemies, but it was brought also by such Jewish giants achronim, the later sages, such as the Beit Yosef, the Mishnah Berurah, of course, is the Chavetz Chaim, the Taz, and the Darkei Moshe. All of this can be found in the Code of Jewish Law. Look in Orach Chaim, chapter 490, and you will be able to see this. Now, this is an amazing thing. This is an amazing concept over here, because not only did we mention these holidays, which have so many examples of rejoicing over the downfall of our enemies, but more so, this question was asked. This question was asked in the times of the Talmud, on the tractate of Erchin 10a and 10b. They asked exactly that question, and the answer that we receive is very simple. The reason why we do not say a full Hallel, praise to God, on the holiday of Passover, except for the first day, is because of the fact that there is nothing new. On Passover, the sacrifice was the same every single day. So the first day, which is it's a brand new holiday, so of course we say a complete full Hallel, because we have a new sacrifice. But the days 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they have the same exact sacrifice as day 1. So therefore, just like in real life, real time, a person gets excited when there is a change. When a person doesn't go to work that day and he goes on a vacation, or he goes on a hike, goes someplace nice, take a break, that brings excitement to a person's life. So very clear. On Sukkot, on the Sukkot holiday, the holiday of the booths, every single day there was a different type of sacrifice. So something new is excitement. Excitement brings upon the obligation of saying a complete Hallel, praise. Not only that, we see also that King David in Tractate Brachot, page 9, side B, says very clearly that King David did not use the praise of Hallelujah until he saw the downfall of the wicked enemies of the Jewish people. Which means, if you look at Psalms, for 103 chapters, the word Hallelujah is not used. Only after King David saw in the Psalm of 104, when he sees the downfall of the wicked as is expressed in that Psalm, then he said the word Hallelujah, which is the highest level of praising God. So this too contradicts the Shibulei Aleket and also the Jewish law authorities that went and took and brought this concept of the Harninu into their halachic works. This straightforward, the bottom line explanation to understand why we don't say a full Hallel on the last day of Passover. The idea being, this straightforward idea is brought down in many, many Jewish law authorities. For example, it's brought down in the Tur, it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch of the Rav of Chabad, it's brought down in Knesset Agdolah, it's brought down in the Rashba, it's brought down in the Aruch HaShulchan, all in the laws of Passover, paragraph 490, chapter 490. So we see that all of these great authorities, Jewish law authorities, did not mention the Shibbolei Lekets quoting a unknown, anonymous midrash. They brought down the words of the simple words of the Gemara, that the reason why we do not say a full Hallel has nothing to do with not rejoicing or rejoicing over the downfall of our enemies. It has nothing to do. It has to do that on Passover we have the same exact sacrifice every single day. Okay, now that was last week. Now here we go. Put on a few seatbelts here. We're going to play some hardball. Okay, a lot of the class is based on an amazing rabbi and an amazing work. This book is by Rabbi Eliyahu Zini, the rabbi of the Technion University in Haifa. And this book is the fourth book on holidays, the laws and customs of Passover by Rabbi Dr. Eliyahu Zini. He's a tremendously amazing person. He is a genius in Torah. He's a genius in investigating Torah sources and digging up unknown manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts. He's also a mathematician giant. So a lot of the stuff will be taken from his book. So let's take it from the top. Right now we're going to go in to the book of the Shibbolei Haleket. Once again, Rabbi Tzidkiah, the son of Abraham, the doctor. So, we're going to find 3 or 4 contradictions to his own words. Once again, the Shibbolei Haleket, who lived 850 years ago, he brings down and quotes a unknown, anonymous, lost to us for hundreds and hundreds of years, a midrash that points the reason why we do not say a full Hallel on the last day of Passover, because the Egyptians drowned in the Red Sea. So we will take the Shibbolei Haleket's book himself, and we will see that contradictions to this concept and principle. Number 1. On chapter 174 in the Shibbolei Haleket, listen closely. The Shibbolei Haleket, Rabbi Tzidkiah, he brings down why we do not say a full entire Hallel prayer on the last days of Passover. Listen to what he says. Reason number 1 that he brings is because he brings down the words of the Talmud, that they have the same exact sacrifice. So there's nothing new. There's nothing new. There's no excitement here. And there, new excitement, something, a new take, a new holiness to the day, a difference. Therefore, we continue with only a half Hallel. That's the first reason he brings. Second reason he brings is a quote from the Jerusalem Talmud in the tractate of Sukkot, the booth, holiday of the booths, page 22, side B. There it says that in the times that we had the temple in Jerusalem, the Beit HaMikdash, every single day there was a Torah, there was a biblical Torah obligation for Jews to take the 4 species. Today we only have the first day is from the Torah. The other days are rabbinical ordination. So the reason why the Jerusalem Talmud tells us, the reason why on Passover we do not say a complete Hallel prayer praise, is because of the fact that it's different. Passover is different from Sukkot. On Sukkot, we have something new. Every single day, there's an obligation, a Torah obligation to take the 4 species. And therefore, we say a full Hallel on Sukkot. But in Passover, there is no such biblical obligation. The only time that there's a Torah obligation on Passover is the first day to eat matzah, first night. So already, very interesting, he's brought down 2 reasons. And only his 3rd reason, last but not least, he brings down the midrash of Harninu, which tells us that we do not celebrate, we do not say a full Hallel because of the fact that the Egyptians drowned, and we are not happy at the downfall of our enemies. So folks, this is an amazing point to think, to contemplate this idea. You give, you know what I'm saying? Somebody asks you a question. You always give your best answers first. And then when you're running out of ammunition, you bring in like a less forceful answer. So this is an amazing thing. This is like the bronze medal. The gold medal was the Babylonian Talmud of Arachin, which tells us that we do not have a special sacrifice for the rest of the days of Passover. Very simple. Nothing to do with not rejoicing over the downfall of our enemies. Number 2, the silver medal goes to the Jerusalem Talmud, which tells us that on Sukkot there is a newness, that every single day there's a new Torah obligation to take and bless over the 4 species, which does not exist. There's nothing new during the holiday of Passover. It's the same exact program every single day after the first day. Last but not least, with the bronze medal, he brings in from this midrash. That says a lot. But we're not through here, folks. We're just beginning to investigate and look in the Shibolei HaLeket. Number 2 contradiction. On chapter 18, in Shibolei HaLeket, listen to what Rabbi Tzidka writes. He explains there in his work why we say every single blessing in the 3 times a day we have the Amidah, the 18 or 19 benedictions that we say, prayers. Listen to this one, amazing. So why do we say the blessing Shover Oivim Umachnia Zedim, that God should destroy and ruin the evil, the enemies? You know why? Listen to the words of the same Shibolei HaLeket who quoted from the anonymous midrash of Harninu. When the Egyptians drowned in the sea, all of the angels of God opened and began saying, Baruch Ata Hashem, God, you are blessed that you have destroyed the wicked. Imagine that. 3 times a day. 3 times a day we recount, we remember, and we thank God. Oh, thank you, God, for not saving the Jewish people. Doesn't say that. God could have saved the Jewish people without having to drown the Egyptians. Remember that always. God has no problem just to go and save the Jewish people and leave the enemies intact. But that is not God's way. God is to destroy the evil, so the evil does not destroy you or good. So an amazing thing, folks. Can you imagine that? This is in the Shibolei HaLeket's words. But we're not through yet. Take 3. In the Shibolei HaLeket, there was a question: if a person is not in a minyan, in a quorum of people that are praying, should he or she say a blessing over the praise, the Hallel prayer? Listen to this amazing words. So the Shibolei HaLeket brings a quote from his brother. My brother, Rav Binyamin, he asked his rabbi, Rabbi Avigdor Kohen Tzedek of blessed memory, he asked them this question: in days that we only say a half-Hallel, should a person that's alone, should they say a blessing over the Hallel? And he answered. So this is, once again, this is Rabbi Tzidkiyahu's brother Binyamin, who asked the question to Rav Avigdor. And the answer was, and this is brought down in the Shibbolei HaLeket, that a person, even though he is not with a quorum of praying people, he still should say the blessing over the half-Hallel, unlike what it says in the Midrash called Shochar Tov. This we do have in our hands. Because there, it says that a person should say Hallel only if he has two other people with him. But you should not rely on the words of the Midrash when it comes to this halachic Jewish law question. Amazing thing. This is brought down in the Shibbolei HaLeket. When you have a substantial law, Jewish law, and you have a source in a Midrash that collides with it, we rely on the solid foundation of Jewish law. Amazing. Folks, I'm surprised you're still sitting there or standing there. Amazing. So he tells us, the Shibbolei HaLeket, Rabbi Tzidkiyahu tells us the principle, just like he brought down in his book two sources, one from the Babylonian Talmud and the other from the Jerusalem Talmud, which says specifically they do not bring in any hint of not rejoicing at the downfall of our enemies. No hint to this. Very simple, straightforward law, Jewish law question. But we're not finished. We have in the same book, the Shibbolei HaLeket, in the laws of Passover, chapter 219. Listen to this. The same Shibbolei HaLeket who quoted a unknown, anonymous source of Harninu, of the Midrash called Harninu. Listen to this, what he writes himself. And on the 8th day of Passover, we're talking, of course, outside the land of Israel, when they add a day. This is the last day of Passover, and he says what we read in the Torah reading, and what do we read for the Haftarah? From the prophets, and from what do we read in the prophets after finishing the Torah? So the Shibbolei HaLeket, Rabbi Tzidkiyahu, brings down here that we say Isaiah chapter 10. It's called Od Hayom Benov La'amod. Why? Why do we say this on the 8th day? Once again, remember, outside the land of Israel, the 7th and 8th day are connected to the splitting of the sea. They're connected to the Egyptians drowning. So listen to this. In his own words, we should be dancing here with joy. This is unbelievable. The Shibbolei HaLeket tells us, you know why we read this on the day, the last day of Passover, when we're celebrating, right, the last days, the drowning of the Egyptians? So listen to this. The reason why is that this chapter, Isaiah 10, is a chapter that speaks about the final redemption, which will also take place, God willing, on Passover. And it also includes the downfall of the king of Assyria, Sancheriv, that also happened on the night of Passover. So imagine that the same source that's telling us not to rejoice, he's telling us the reason why we read this, the words of the prophets on the last day of Passover outside the land of Israel, is because of the fact that it has the downfall of the king of Assyria, Sancheriv, and it has the downfall of the evil nations before the coming of the redemption should be today. Amazing. So we have 4 or 5 sources that contradict within the same author, contradicting his own words in Shibolei Aleket. So that's pretty amazing stuff. Next, the Shibolei Aleket brought as a proof a verse from Mishlei 24:17 of King Solomon. It says there that a person should not rejoice at the downfall of their enemies. Now, who in the world is this verse speaking about? Are we talking about a Jewish enemy? Are we talking about a non-Jewish enemy? So, in the Talmud, Tractate Megillah, page 16, side 1, it's very clear. There's a story there that we are told that after fasting for 3 days, the king Achashverosh tells Haman to go and put Mordechai on a horse and lead him throughout the city as to reward Mordechai for saving him some years before that. Saving the king Achashverosh before that. So Mordechai is about to get on a horse. When you get on a horse, the horse is very tall. It's not easy to get on a horse. So Mordechai said, listen, Haman, I've been fasting for 3 days. I don't have any strength. You bend down and I'll step on your back, and that will get like a stepping block. I'll just go onto the horse. So Haman goes down on his knees, puts his back there, and Mordechai kicks him in the stomach and then laughs. Haman can't believe it. Now Haman was in Mordechai's house for some years, so he knew a lot of Jewish customs. He said, doesn't it say in your Torah that when you see the downfall of your enemy, you should not rejoice? So why are you rejoicing in my downfall? I'm an enemy of the Jewish people, true. But why are you rejoicing? Why are you laughing when you kicked me in the stomach? So Mordechai tells him, that verse you quoted by King Solomon in Mishlei, that is a verse that is talking about the Jewish people. When you have somebody that you don't like, you have a personal enemy, and that person falls, a person fails something, has a downfall, you don't rejoice when it's a fellow Jew. But you, Haman, for the nations of the world that are wicked, person rejoices. So it's very clear that the verse that the Shibolei Haleket brought down by King Solomon is not talking about the nations of the world. So his reason, the reason that he brings in the name of this Midrash, Harninu, is totally invalid because of the fact that we're talking here about Jews. Do not rejoice when you see the downfall of your personal enemy who happens to be Jewish. So it seems very clear. Now, Rabbi Eliyahu Zini really hits the ball, boom, out of the ballpark. He tells us an amazing principle. He says, look in all of the Torah, look in all of the Tanakh, and you will see when enemies, oyev, is spelt with only one yud, the letter yud, that is always talking about a Jew. Oyevecha with one yud. If the word oyevecha, your enemies, has 2 yud, it's talking about the nations of the world. And he goes through his book. In his book, he goes through all of them. There is only one exception to the rule, and he explains why there's an exception to the rule. And amazing how he was able to come up with that. Amazing how he was able to come up with that. This is before the computer age. And an amazing thing. So folks, if you look at Mishlei 24:17, you will see very clearly that when King Solomon said, you should not rejoice at the downfall of your enemy, that is with one yud. If it's with one yud, baby, then it's talking about a Jewish personal enemy, a person that you don't like. Not talking about the nations of the world. So, it's an amazing thing. Not only that, but Rabbi Zinni brings in another point. The Shibolei Aleket, when he's quoting the Midrash of Harninu, he brings the verse in the name, the downfall, thou shalt not rejoice at the downfall of your enemy. He brings it in the name of one of our sages named Shmuel, the son of Abba. That was his father's name, was Abba. So, we know that Shmuel, the son of Abba, his rabbi was Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Zinni brings down in his book many statements of Rabbi Yochanan, the rabbi of Shmuel bar Abba, who tells us that we do not rejoice at the downfall of our enemies, and that's why we do not sing the full Hallel praise on the 7th day of Passover. His rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan, says exactly the opposite in many places around the Talmud. So we have a concept. When you have an argument between a teacher and a student, the law is according to the teacher. Now, with all that said and done, as far as the Shibolei Aleket, let's start bringing out some hard balls here. Start hitting them out of the stadium. Check it out. The Jews do not sing praises at the downfall of their enemies, but they did. They have. And God willing, we shall continue. Listen to this. Listen to this. If you look at the tractate of Passover, 117a, you'll see there that the Jews and the angels sang praises, sang songs to God, Az Yashir, in the morning. What the Talmud tells us that at night, when the Jews and the Egyptians were being judged, who will come out victorious in this judgment? Therefore God told the angels, do not sing. But when it was decided that the Jewish people were victorious and the enemies lost and they were drowned, so the angels and the Jews did sing at the downfall of our enemies during the 7th day of Passover, as is clearly stated in the tractate Passover 117. But more so, folks, this is an amazing thing. Let's wake up. I say that as a pun, but it's also true. If you look in the morning prayers, there's a prayer that we say every single day. We sing. It says in the Code of Jewish Law that one that sings with tremendous concentration and intention, when we sing the Az Yashir, what we sang at the downfall of the Egyptians, when we sang that song, Az Yashir Moshe, one that says it with tremendous concentration, his sins are forgiven. That's how important this song is. And it was instituted as a daily prayer. What in the world is going on? Why are every day, if you look at that prayer, we're not only talking about the salvation of the Jewish people. Verse after verse after verse is talking about the downfall and illustrated, graphic, how they fell. So why do we say that prayer if Jews do not rejoice at the downfall of their enemies? We shouldn't be singing that song at all. Or if we sang that song, we should cross out some of those verses. But it goes more so. Let's look in the mirror. Let's smell the coffee. Let's be honest. Every day, in our morning prayers, before we come to the highest, the pedestal of our prayers, the Amidah, what do we say? We thank God for killing all the firstborn Egyptians. In fact, there was no house in Egypt that somebody didn't die there. And we thank God for that, and we thank God for drowning the Egyptians. And we say right after those two incidents, Al zot shibchu ha'ovim v'romemu. This is why we're singing. This is why we're praising God. This is why we're happy. So maybe we better like the Reform movement and conservative movement, maybe we just cross that out of our prayer books. We say that every single day in our morning prayers. Some of us are still sleeping when it comes to the morning prayers, so like we're not awake yet. Okay. Also, in the evening prayers, you might say a person after a day of work, he's really tired, he's like falling asleep. Also here, but in the evening prayers, after the Shema Yisrael prayer, we thank God for drowning our enemies in the sea. We're thanking God for that in Egypt. And because of this, we sing out with praise. Because al zot shibchu geulim l'shimcha gadol asvatem. This is why we're singing. We're singing, it says specifically, because you drowned our enemies. And once again, remember the principle. God could have saved the Jewish people without touching a hair of an Egyptian. An amazing source. Listen to this one. It says in Shochar Tov, page 604. Listen to the words and engrave them on your heart for all our lives. Listen closely. It quotes a verse by King Solomon. We say it every Friday night. Pia potcha bechokma v'torat chesed al-leshona. Her mouth is open with words of wisdom, and the Torah, the law of kindness, is on her lips, on her tongue. The words of kindness. You know what this is talking about? Listen up. Words of kindness. What are we talking about here? Listen up. You see that for 26 generations, since God created the world until the Jewish people left Egypt, no one said the Hallel, the praise prayer, until the Jewish people left Egypt. And then they said, finally, after 26 generations, from the time of Adam and Eve, when did they choose to sing the Hallel praise prayer? Listen to this. When did they sing? They sang when they saw the firstborn of the Egyptians. And we said every single house in Egypt suffered a loss. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 firstborn. I'm not going to get exactly details how's that possible, but the Talmud explains exactly how that's possible. There was no house where somebody died. And they said it exactly. They said the song. They sang those praises at the time. Folks, if you don't want to sing at the downfall of the enemy, so wait till you get to the airport. Wait till you get out of Egypt. Wait till you're in the desert. There's plenty of time to sing. Why do they have to sing? Why do they have to sing? They chose the time when God destroyed and killed the enemy of the firstborn Egyptians. Amazing. And it's called Torat Chesed. This is Jewish kindness. When you destroy evil people, you are doing a kindness. This is not cruelty. This is real kindness. Because when you're kind to the cruel, then you're cruel to the kind. And when you're kind to the cruel, then evil continues to reign in the world. And they're able to destroy good, beautiful people. Think about how many people at night in America, when night falls, they have to lock themselves 6, 7 locks on their, I'm not talking about bagels either, but locks on their door. Why? Why do we have to? Because of these evil people, these few evil people. I mean, I know America's number one in the world as far as prison population, but still, it's a minority. And look, the majority of people have to suffer because of these wicked people. But folks, listen to this amazing source. Not only did the Jewish people sing, not only did the angels sing, when they witnessed the downfall of the evil Egyptian regime. But listen to this, amazing. It says, the entire world in Mechilta, source of Mechilta, on the portion, book of Exodus, portion of Bishalach, tells us an amazing thing, that not only did the Jewish people sing when they saw the downfall of the Egyptians, but the entire world. Folks, the entire world sang when they saw the evil regime of the Egyptians fall. That's a normal world. So folks, not only are the Jewish people and the angels singing, but the entire world sang in praise to God when they saw finally another one bites the dust. The Egyptians hit the dust. This created a tremendous sanctification of God's name. That is the point. When evil is eradicated, this is a sanctification of God's name. When the evil fall, this sanctifies God's name as the world took notice and sang along with the Jewish people. An amazing. Going further, belting it out here on Super Wednesdays. Another seatbelt. The Magen Avram, who's a authority of Jewish law. You could look in the Code of Jewish Law. He's right there on the page of the Code of Jewish Law. He writes in Orach Chaim 490. Listen to this. On the second day of Passover, that is the 16th day of Nisan, one must have a special meal or a special dish in his meal, her meal. Why? Why do we have to have an additional? We said there's nothing really special about the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh day. There's not a special sacrifice or there's not a special commandment like there is on Sukkot to take the four species. So what's the celebration here? So the Magen Avram, the Jewish law authority, tells us in the name of the Shlach HaKadosh, he tells us that this was the day that Haman was hanged. Folks, can you believe this? Have a special meal. You know, we say during the night of the Seder, why is this night different than any other night? Well, this year, baby, we're going to make it different. The second day of Passover, out there, we are going to celebrate together. We will have a special meal or a special additional dish. You know, maybe a pizza, a matzah pizza, you know, or a matzah lasagna, baby. Something special. Why? Because that was the day, the 16th day of Nisan was the day that Haman was hanged. And Jews do not celebrate the downfall of their enemies, yeah? But let's check this one out. Rabbi Sadia Gaon lived 1100 years ago in the times what is called the Geonim. The Geonim period was approximately 1400 years ago, and it continued for 500 years approximately. So Rabbi Sadia Gaon, a tremendous thinker, a Jewish philosopher, he writes in his prayer book on page 194, he writes the following, that the seventh day of Passover is called the holiday of destruction. You heard that right? You could put those little Q-tips in your ear, but I'm going to say it one more time. Then, in the name of the Gaon, Rabbi Sadia Gaon, 1100 years ago, writes in his prayer book that Passover, the last day of Passover, is called the Chag Hashmada, the holiday of the destruction of the Egyptians. The holiday of the destruction. Amazing. But folks, we're really going to send it out right now. Take a seat or take a stand. The Gra just clears the bases. Rabbi Eliyahu of Vilna lived 250 years ago. He just clears the bases. And in a few places in his books, for example, we have here the Likutei Agra on page 264. The Gra tells us a tremendous lesson, tremendous foundation, principle. Why is God called also, amongst other names, HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What's Kadosh and what's Baruch Hu? So the Gra, as he did so many times, he reveals tremendous secrets to all of us. Listen to this closely. He says the following: whenever you see the name HaKadosh, this is a name that God uses when he performs strict judgment on the world. Because when God performs strict judgment on the world, the nations, his name is sanctified because now the nations are fearful of God. So HaKadosh is strict judgment. Baruch Hu is when God brings kindness to the world, so to speak. God's name grows. So if you notice in the Kaddish, we say Yit Gadal, God's name should grow. That's the first stage. That's kindness. But the second stage, a higher stage, is Yit Kadash. God's name should be exalted when he does judgment, strict judgment against the nations of the world. So, the Gra tells us that this concept of the difference between the name HaKadosh and Baruch Hu, one being strict judgment, the other kindness, this is based on a verse in Mishlei, chapter 11, verse 10. Listen to this. When God performs kindness, I'm summarizing it. When God performs kindness to the righteous, the city is elated. However, only, underline that, when God avenges from our enemies, do people sing praises to God. Therefore, for example, the Gra gives us an example. In Egypt, God performed tremendous acts of kindness to the Jewish people in the Exodus. The Jews were happy, though they did not sing. Only after the Egyptians drowned did they sing. So we see there's Yit Gadal, God's name will, so to speak, grow when God brings kindness to the Jewish people. So there is an elevation of God's name, but it is only a minimal level of sanctification. When God brings down vengeance against the enemies, against evil nations, regimes, people, then we reach the level of singing. And that happened on Passover when the Egyptians drowned. So too, the Gra says, on Purim, one must celebrate more the downfall of the evil Haman than the kindness shown to Mordechai, since the downfall of the enemies of evil brings a higher level of sanctification of God's name. And listen to this unbelievable take by Rabbi Bravda, Shlomo Bravda, in his book, Kimu Vikiblu, on page 'don't have the page, but look it up in his book. In his book, Kimu Vikiblu. Listen to this. When one drinks and is no longer able, one is drinking intoxicating beverages on Purim, and is no longer able to distinguish between the sanctification of God's name through the downfall of Haman compared to the blessings to Mordechai, you must stop drinking because you've lost your understanding. Amazing! What the law says on Purim, that a person has to drink. When do you stop drinking? The idea is, this is brought down by many Jewish law authorities, that during the entire day we have a commandment, a rabbinical commandment, to continuously drink. And when do we stop? We stop drinking when we reach a level when we are not sure what is greater. The blessings of maybe I had too many drinks today. The blessings of Mordechai or the curse of Haman and the wicked. Folks, this is an amazing take. A person, a Jew, on Purim and during the entire year, we have to understand that God's name is sanctified much more when the enemies of the Jewish people fall and are punished and are eliminated, annihilated, than when God metes out kindness to the Jewish people. That's an amazing thing to remember. Once you don't remember that, stop. You've lost your understanding. You've lost your intelligence. Can you imagine what we're saying here? An amazing thing. Last but not least, we'll give about 5 other reasons why other commentators bring down. Why don't we say a full Hallel? Okay, you convinced me. I understand everything. Okay, but why don't we say a full Hallel? Well, first of all, we gave you a lot of good reasons from the Talmud, whether the Babylonian Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud spells it out. But we're going to give you some more. According to Shara Kavanot of the Arizal, the first day of Passover, God brought upon the Jewish people tremendous light, so to speak, a spirituality. But it was all from God's side. It wasn't something that we earned. We know that in Egypt, the Jews were on a very low level. We were on the 49th level of impurity. So we did not deserve that. It was a present from God. So the first day, it was a tremendous light, spirituality, greatness that was brought down during that day by God, but it was all from the side of God. So therefore we say a complete Hallel because it came from God. However, the other days, that was, the light disappeared after the first day, and now for the next 49 days till the holiday of Shavuot, the Jewish people must start working on themselves, perfecting themselves, their characteristic traits on the 49 days of the counting of the Omer till we receive the Torah. So therefore, the light, the tremendous present that God had given us on the first day, it was all God, not us. Therefore, that disappeared. And now it's time for us to do some hard work and sweat it out. So therefore, we do not say a full Hallel, because only when we finish the process of perfecting ourselves 49 days later, that is when we say, when we did something, when we toiled and worked hard, that is when we say the full Hallel. According to the Kolbo, very simple. Why don't we say a full Hallel on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th day? Very simply, because there is a commandment, a Torah commandment, to eat matzah only on the first day of Passover. So therefore, on the first day of Passover, we have a complete Hallel. The rest of the days, you don't have to eat matzah. You can't eat leavened bread or anything leavened, but you don't have to eat matzah. Ben Ish Chai writes, the reason why we don't say a full Hallel on the 7th day of Passover is because of the fact that the Jewish people, as it says in the Talmud, the Jewish people were being judged at the time before the event of the splitting of the Reed Sea. the Jewish people were also in judgment, not only the Egyptians. And the angels stated that there is no difference between the Jews and the Egyptians. Both of them are worshiping idols. As we know by the prophet Jeremiah, he tells us straight out that the Jewish people worshipped idols in Egypt. So therefore, the Ben Ish Chai writes that the reason why we don't say a full Hallel on the last day, because the Jewish people were not deserving of that miracle. Because we were in the same boat as the Egyptians. We were also idol worshippers. So what is there to celebrate here? The Zohar HaKadosh, Secrets of the Torah, writes in Leviticus 95, side B. He says that the holiday of Passover is connected. It is one with the holiday of the acceptance of the Torah 49 days later on Mount Sinai, the Shavuot holiday. So therefore, when we got out of Egypt, God brought down a tremendous light and tremendous miracle, etc. Therefore, we say an entire Hallel. But we do not say again a full Hallel until that process has been finished. That process was finished only 49 days later when the Jewish people perfected themselves. So, as also the Nachmanides writes the same, that basically Passover is one holiday with Shavuot. So it's a process. The first day was all God. The next 49 days we begin to perfect ourselves, our characteristic traits, our actions, our thoughts, our deeds. And then once we've reached that and we receive the Torah, then we say the full praise. That's the end of the, it's like, imagine you're in the army and you're taking, you have to do a 50-mile hike. So no one's going to stop in the 20th mile and start giving you honors and have ceremonies. You get the ceremony when you get to the end. You have the beginning ceremony when you start, and you have the end. That's how it works. This is an amazing lesson. If you think about what the Zohar is saying, it's a beautiful lesson, which we see it every day. Freedom is beautiful. But however, like anything else, freedom could be utilized, used, or it can be abused. Because a person is free doesn't mean that he's going to be a good person. Look how many types of people all over the world were at one time slaves. And look, unfortunately, they misused and abused that freedom that they received. And look what they're doing to the world, bringing a lot of evil to the world. A lot of these people are bringing a lot of evil to the world. So, freedom is great. Passover is great. Okay, but what are you going to do with a Passover? We say in the Israeli national anthem, we want to be a free people. Okay, but what are we going to do with our freedom? Now that we have a state, are we going to make it a state like any other state in the world? Or is it going to be a Jewish state? The characteristic of the state is Jewish. That is the question. So Passover is just freedom. It's good to be free. It's the beginning. But what are we going to do with our freedom? That is the 49 days later on Mount Sinai, which we say, now that we are free, we want to accept God as our master. And we want to accept the Torah. Therefore, this makes freedom worthwhile. Last but not least, an amazing Natziv in his book, in his commentary on the Torah, Emek Davar. He writes there, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yuda of Berlin, he writes there on Numbers 28:17, an amazing line. You have to open up a book here. You have to see this. This is beautiful. To understand that even the notes, the music of the Torah, teaches us tremendous lessons. So the Netziv says the following. You know why we don't say a full Hallel praise on days 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of Passover. You know why? Because only on the first day of Passover, on the 15th day of the month of Nisan, which is the first day of Passover, does it use the word Chag, holiday. Now, I'm going to read the verse, and I'm not going to stop at the proper place. And then you can understand the beauty now. When you know where the notes are and you know when to stop, you'll see what the Netziv is saying. It says the following: on the 15th day of this month, you will have a holiday of 7 days. You will eat matzah, unleavened bread. Now, it seems like from that verse very clearly that how I read it, that Passover has the status of a holiday for all 7 days. But the Netziv just told us the reason why we do not say a full Hallel for 6 days of Passover is because it only uses the expression holiday on the first day. So it seems like a contradiction. It's no contradiction. If you open up now your book, Numbers 28:17. Now look, I'm going to read it properly now. Where to stop? On the 15th day of the month, you will have a holiday. Stop. On the 15th month of this month, you will have a holiday. Stop. And then it says 7 days you shall eat matzah, unleavened bread. That is the way to read it. You don't read it 7 days holiday. It's on the 15th day you shall have a holiday. By the way, for those serious students out there, you could look at his commentary on Exodus 13:6. It seems like there is a verse that contradicts this. It looks like the verse that says on the 7th day of Passover it's also considered to be a holiday. He explains it very simply, okay, why it's not. So look over. Okay, last but not least, why? Why do we rejoice? Is this cruelty? Is this something we should aspire to? Okay. Maimonides writes in his Guide to the Perplexed, first book, chapter 54. He writes there, it seems like when the Torah commands us to destroy the 7 nations who lived, the 7 Canaanite nations who lived in Israel, destroy them, do not allow them to live. And it seems like perhaps that maybe this is cruelty. And he says, no, look at the continuation of the verse. The verse says that the reason why you have to eliminate these nations are the fact that they will lead you into terrible actions. That's what it says in the verse. So Maimonides writes very clearly that if you have a people, a nation, an ideology that is bringing the world to terrible things, to terrible sins, like we're not missing. Today there's all types of movements that are are bringing people further away from God. So there's nothing more righteous than the elimination of such elements. That's what he writes. Rabbi Kook writes in his book Orot, the 21st paragraph, he writes there an amazing thing, that Christianity destroyed the law in the world. They destroyed the judicial system in the world. Why? Because the Christianity brought to the world, turn your other cheek. Christianity brought to us, if somebody took your sweater, so offer them your coat also. So this destroyed the world, because when you do not destroy evil, when you turn the other cheek to evil, not that they really believe that, not that they act in that way, but that's what it says in their books, you know? But this destroyed law. This destroyed the world, because the world cannot exist when you turn the cheek to evil and you allow it to thrive and you support it. Then the good and the holy and the pure is eliminated. So you have the choice. Rabbi Ariel, the chief rabbi of Ramat Gan, writes in his book, The Laws of War, Rabbi Ariel, he says, we seem to have a contradiction. On one hand, King Solomon said, we do not rejoice at the downfall of our enemies. On the other hand, we have a verse that tells us in the Torah that you should rejoice when you see the downfall of the wicked. He says, very simple, if you have a personal enemy, don't rejoice if you see him fall. If there's a personal hatred here before for a person, don't rejoice. However, if we are talking about the fall of the wicked, allowing righteousness to prevail, then a person not only is allowed to be happy, they are commanded to be happy. When you see an evil ideology, an evil regime fall, this is a commandment, not if you want to be happy. Be happy when the evil falls. Very simple. When the evil falls, the good and the pure and the righteous can prevail. Looking over my notes, folks, this is just going to take one more minute, but I don't want to, I don't want to lose it here. I just have to say, this is in parentheses here. I should have said it before, but when you're doing something live, sometimes this happens. When we spoke about when the verse King Solomon said that a person should not rejoice at the downfall of their enemies, that this was talking only about Jews, and we brought a few proofs. That is nothing. I'm going to say names now of rabbis, tremendous authorities. We're talking about Rishonim. We're talking about the Rishonim period. The Rishonim period was approximately a period of 500 years, from 1,000 years ago to a little over 500 years ago. That is the Rishonim. So let me name a few. The Tashbetz writes on the Ethics of the Fathers. It's either in chapter 4, Mishnah 19. In some editions it could be the Mishnah is 24. He writes very straight, black and forward, that when it's talking about you should not rejoice, we're talking about a Jewish personal enemy. And when it comes to evil, the nations, when it comes to evil Jews, you are allowed to celebrate. It's a commandment to celebrate. Going on further, we have Rabbi Yosef Vakhdin. He was the top student of Maimonides, of the Rambam. He writes that in his commentary on the Ethics of the Fathers, the same Mishnah. He writes the same idea over here and brings it down. The father of the Chida writes also in his work on the Ethics of our Fathers. He brings down the same idea, that what King Solomon was talking about is a personal enemy, a personal Jewish enemy, something you don't like about a person, something bothers you about a person. He didn't lend you you came up to his house, you wanted some butter, and he didn't lend it to you. That is something you should not rejoice over their downfall. The Rashbam writes that Shlomo, the King Solomon, was talking about in his work, you should not celebrate. That is talking about two Jews that hate each other, and when it has something in business, something that in this world's dealings that went wrong between the two. And according to Shmuel HaKatan, the Rashbam says, what Shmuel HaKatan was saying, who brought down this verse by King Solomon, saying that we should not be rejoicing in the downfall of the enemy. This is talking about two Torah scholars who are arguing what the law is, afterwards, when it's decided the law, one should not carry a grudge and be happy and rejoice if the second scholar falls or has a downfall or failed on something. So we see one, and there's an entire, we can keep on going, but these are, once again, Rishonim. There's a much greater weight when we see when we're talking about the Talmud, or the Geonim, or the Rishonim, or there's a much greater weight than the Achronim, which is a period of the last 525 or 50 years. There's much greater weight. So, wishing all a great Passover, and we hope to see all of us in the land of Israel with the temple, sacrificing